When you think of 1980s cartoon classics, a nostalgic look back, you might remember a carefree Saturday morning. Just you, a sugary bowl of cereal, and a lineup of heroes, villains, and blue mushroom dwellers. But behind that comforting routine, a seismic change was coming. 1981's FCC deregulation unleashed a storm, letting brands like Mattel create entire worlds and entire toy empires from shows like He-Man. Millions tuned in, but few realized they were witnessing the birth of a billion-dollar industry and the end of innocence in children's television. How did 8 simple cartoons spark a global pop culture revolution? And what secret forces turned nostalgia into commerce? The truth starts right here, where Smurfs gave way to swords, syndicates, and Saturday magic. No kid needed an alarm clock on Saturday mornings in the early 1980s. Eyes popped open with the first hint of daylight, feet hit the shag carpet, and the kitchen became a battleground for the last box of Fruit Loops or Cocoa Pebbles. The TV was a sacred altar. If you were lucky, you got there before your siblings, claimed the best spot on the couch, and settled in for the only hours of the week that truly belonged to you. There was no pausing, no rewinding, no streaming, just a carefully orchestrated dance between cereal spoons and the network schedule. Miss your favorite show, and that was it. You'd have to wait a whole week, which felt like an eternity when you were 7. The networks knew exactly what they were doing. ABC, NBC, and CBS each rolled out their best every Saturday morning, stacking the lineup with cartoons that hit every taste. One channel might kick things off with a blue-skinned village dodging a grumpy wizard, while another offered up sword-swinging heroes or wisecracking robots. The commercials in between were just as much a part of the ritual. Jingles for toys, breakfast cereals, and the latest sneakers wormed their way into your brain, ready to be debated with friends on Monday morning. There was a special kind of anticipation that built all week, knowing these hours were coming. School faded away, chores could wait, and even parents seemed to respect the unwritten rule. Saturday mornings were off limits. For a few precious hours, the living room transformed into a portal. One minute you were in a mushroom village, the next you were piloting a spaceship, then suddenly dodging booby traps with a talking duck and his nephews. The only real decisions were which show to prioritize when 2 favorites overlapped, and whether to risk missing a minute for a refill of cereal. This wasn't just TV, it was a shared experience. Millions of kids across the country, all tuned in at the same time, all munching the same sugary breakfast, all humming the same theme songs. The playground on Monday was a replay booth. Who saw Skeletor's latest scheme? Who caught the new Transformer? Did anyone else try to build a turtle lair out of couch cushions? The stories, the catchphrases, even the commercials became the glue that held childhood together week after week, year after year. Back then, there was no on-demand, no DVR, no way to catch up if you missed out. The stakes felt high, even if you didn't realize it. Saturday mornings were a live event, a weekly holiday, a ritual that made everyone feel like they belonged to something just a little bit bigger than their own living room. For those few hours, the world was pure possibility, colorful, loud, and absolutely yours. The Smurfs landed on NBC in September 1981, bringing something entirely different to American Saturday mornings. A gentle, blue-skinned community straight out of the Belgian imagination. Created by Pierre Peyo Culliford in 1958 for the pages of Spirou magazine, the Smurfs had already spent decades as comic strip favorites across Europe before ever setting foot in the US. Their world was pure whimsy, mushroom houses, a wise Papa Smurf in red, and a language that swapped out half the nouns for the word Smurf. There were no laser battles or plastic vehicles to collect, just stories about kindness, teamwork, and outsmarting the not-so-scary Gargamel. But while American kids were falling for these tiny villages, the rules of the cartoon game were about to change in a big way. In 1981, the FCC swept away the old restrictions that had kept children's programming and advertising at arm's length. Suddenly, there was nothing stopping toy makers and TV producers from teaming up to create shows built around products, not the other way around. The Smurfs, with their roots in European storytelling and comic artistry, were a last burst of innocence before the floodgates opened. Enter Mattel, ready to seize the moment. Instead of adapting an old comic or fairy tale, Mattel's team set out to build a hero from scratch, one designed for the toy aisle first and the TV screen second. The result was He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, which hit the airwaves in 1983. Unlike the Smurfs' cozy mushroom village, He-Man's world of Eternia was packed with bulging muscles, battle cries, and a villain with a skull for a face. The battles between He-Man and Skeletor weren't just good versus evil. They were showdowns designed to launch a whole universe of action figures, vehicles, and playsets. What made He-Man revolutionary wasn't just the sword and sorcery spectacle. It was the business model behind it. Mattel's team pitched retailers on a toy line backed by a cartoon, promising kids would know every character and vehicle before they ever hit store shelves. The FCC's new rules meant the animated series could double as a weekly commercial, and Mattel didn't waste a second. He-Man figures appeared in stores alongside the show's debut, and kids could reenact battles with their own Battle Cats and Castle Grayskull playsets before the credits even finished rolling. This was the dawn of the toy-driven cartoon boom. In just 2 years, the Saturday morning landscape flipped from European imports, like the Smurfs, to American-made, toy-powered juggernauts. The Smurfs kept their spot through the decade, but the commercial tide was rising fast. The next wave, robots, soldiers, mutant turtles, would take the formula even further, turning Saturday mornings into the front line of a marketing revolution that would define an entire generation of childhood. G.I. Joe and Transformers didn't just fill toy aisles. They rewrote the playbook for what a cartoon could be. G.I. Joe, a real American hero, hit TV in 1983, but the real genius move happened before the first episode even aired. Hasbro, working with Marvel Comics, spotted a loophole in the old advertising rules. You couldn't run a cartoon as a toy commercial, but you could promote a comic book. So they rolled out 30-second animated spots for the G.I. Joe comic, mini episodes that introduced Duke, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, and the whole Cobra crew. The toys flew off shelves before most kids even saw the show. It was a marketing masterstroke. The comic ads doubled as teasers for the action figures, and by the time the cartoon arrived, the G.I. Joe universe was already a playground legend. But G.I. Joe didn't just sell toys, it sold a whole vision of heroism. Every episode wrapped up with a PSA, usually starring Duke or Roadblock, and that unforgettable catchphrase, "Knowing is half the battle." It wasn't just lip service. Kids tuned in for the action, but those quick lessons on safety, honesty, and looking out for your friends stuck around long after the credits rolled. The roster grew every year. New Joes, new Cobras, new vehicles to beg for at Christmas, until the toy line boasted more than 500 figures and vehicles by the end of the decade. Transformers took the toy cartoon connection global. When Hasbro launched Transformers in 1984, they weren't just repackaging toys. They were importing an entire Japanese robot line called Diaclone and Microchange, then working with Marvel to give every bot a name, a backstory, and a place in the ongoing war between Autobots and Decepticons. The result? A cartoon that made Optimus Prime and Megatron household names, and a toy line that turned every kid's bedroom into a battlefield. Peter Cullen's voice as Prime set the gold standard for cartoon leaders, steady, noble, and just a little bit weary from all that responsibility. The Transformers cartoon wasn't just a hit, it was a full-blown phenomenon. The theme song, More Than Meets the Eye, became a rallying cry, and the show's mix of sci-fi, action, and soap opera drama kept kids glued to the screen. But nothing prepared fans for the 1986 Transformers, the movie, where Hasbro made a business call that rocked the fandom. Optimus Prime died on screen, making way for a new generation of toys. The backlash was instant and fierce. Kids wrote angry letters, parents called the studio, and Hasbro eventually brought Prime back to life in the series. That moment proved these weren't just toys, they were heroes kids truly cared about. Both G.I. Joe and Transformers rewrote the rules for cartoons and toys, blending story, action, and marketing into a single, unstoppable engine. G.I. Joe's PSAs and team spirit made it an American original, while Transformers' Japanese-American fusion set the stage for global animation hits. Together, they turned Saturday mornings into a showcase for what cartoons could do: teach, thrill, and yes, sell a mountain of toys. Next up, the world of animated cat warriors and fantasy epics was about to get its turn in the spotlight. Thundercats stormed onto TV screens in 1985, bringing a whole new flavor to Saturday mornings. This wasn't just another brawl between good guys and bad guys. This was epic fantasy, with Lion-O leading a team of cat-like heroes across the wilds of Third Earth. The show blended sword and sorcery with science fiction, giving us laser-firing tanks, haunted castles, and villains like Mum-Ra, who could actually make your cereal go soggy if you stared too long. Rankin/Bass, the studio behind those classic holiday specials, took a big swing here. Instead of elves and snowmen, they teamed up with Japan's Pacific Animation Corporation to give Thundercats a look that felt almost cinematic. The animation was slick, the backgrounds were lush, and the action sequences had a weight to them that made every Thundercats ho feel like the start of a real adventure. Even the music hit different. Bernard Hoffer's theme was pure adrenaline, and if you ever shouted it while jumping off the couch, you weren't alone. Lion-O wasn't your typical muscle-bound hero either. He started out as a kid in a grown-up's body, learning about leadership, responsibility, and the difference between swinging a sword and actually making tough choices. The team dynamic was a big part of the show's appeal. Cheetara's speed, Tigra's brains, Panthro's tech skills, and the comic relief from Snarf. Every episode mixed action with a little bit of heart, usually wrapping things up with a lesson about courage, honesty, or sticking together when things got tough. Thundercats didn't just sell toys, it built a whole world you wanted to live in, or at least visit for a few hours every weekend. But if Thundercats was the gold standard for fantasy adventure, Inspector Gadget was Saturday morning's answer to slapstick comedy and spy capers. Debuting in 1983, Gadget was the bumbling detective who somehow managed to save the day with a helicopter hat, extendable arms, and a whole trunkload of gizmos that half the time worked by accident. The real brains of the operation? His niece Penny and her dog Brain, who solved every case from the shadows while Gadget bumbled along, blissfully unaware. The show's secret sauce came from its global roots. DIC Entertainment, a French company, handled the production, while the animation itself came from Tokyo Movie Shinsha in Japan. The result was a cartoon that felt fast, bright, and a little bit different from anything else on the air. Inspector Gadget was also one of the first cartoons to really nail the hero-villain formula with a twist. Dr. Claw, always seen from the back, became the ultimate mystery baddie. Just a metal glove, a deep growl, and that ever-present cat. Every episode followed the same rhythm. Gadget would get a mission, Penny and Brain would do the real work, and somehow Gadget would get the credit. The humor was broad, the gadgets were ridiculous, and the theme song, written by Shuki Levy and Haim Saban, was the kind of earworm that still pops up in your head when you least expect it. What makes this era so special is how these shows proved that the Saturday morning formula could stretch way beyond toy commercials or straight-up action. Thundercats and Inspector Gadget showed just how much room there was for creativity, whether you wanted epic battles and sci-fi mythology or zany slapstick and secret agents. The catchphrases alone, Thundercats Ho and Go Go Gadget Copter, became playground currency. And thanks to the international production teams behind both shows, Saturday morning suddenly felt a lot bigger, a little weirder, and a whole lot more fun. DuckTales didn't just arrive. It crashed through the doors in 1987 with a kind of swagger that only Disney could pull off. Up until then, weekday cartoons were mostly cheap and cheerful, but Disney decided to gamble big, dropping a jaw-dropping $20 million to produce a full 65-episode order for syndication. That move was unheard of at the time, and it showed. The animation quality was a cut above, with vibrant backgrounds, expressive characters, and action that actually felt cinematic, even if you were watching on a tiny TV after school. At the heart of it all was Scrooge McDuck, the cane-swinging Scottish billionaire who could outwit any villain and still make time for a dive into his money bin. He wasn't alone, of course. Huey, Dewey, and Louie, his 3 troublemaking nephews, were right there with him, dashing from one wild, globe-trotting adventure to the next. Whether they were racing pirates, braving booby-trapped tombs, or chasing down a lost artifact, every episode felt like a mini blockbuster. And let's be honest, that theme song, it's still burrowed deep in everyone's brain. Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg, the kind of earworm that made you want to jump into a pile of gold coins, even if you knew you'd break your neck. What made DuckTales revolutionary wasn't just the animation or the music, it was the way Disney treated TV with the same care as their movies. By rolling out all 65 episodes at once in syndication, they gave local stations a daily cartoon that felt like an event, not just a time filler. That syndication model meant kids could catch a new adventure every single weekday, and it set the bar for every cartoon that followed. DuckTales proved that cartoons could be big budget, ambitious, and just as exciting as anything on Saturday mornings. And it opened the door for a new wave of network-quality shows, just in time for a certain band of pizza-loving turtles to make their own splash. Oozing into the spotlight in December 1987, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles didn't just crash the party, they redefined what a cartoon could do. These weren't legacy comic book heroes or toy prototypes from a corporate boardroom. The Turtles started as a self-published parody comic by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, drawn up in a cramped New England living room. That humble origin story made their meteoric rise all the more wild. By the time the animated series hit syndication, Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael had already built a cult following among comic fans. But the cartoon, lighter, zanier, and armed with pizza puns, turned 4 wisecracking reptiles into household names. The formula was pure 80s magic. Each turtle had his own color-coded mask and personality. Leo was the leader, Donnie the techie, Raph the sarcastic one, and Mikey the party dude. Their mentor, Splinter, and the villainous Shredder rounded out a cast that felt instantly iconic. The show's blend of martial arts, slapstick, and pop culture references made it a hit with kids, and let's be honest, more than a few parents. But what really set TMNT apart was how it conquered every corner of pop culture. Playmates launched the action figures in 1988, and within 4 years, Turtle toys had racked up over $1 billion in sales. For a stretch, they were outselling even G.I. Joe and Transformers. It wasn't just about the toys, though. The Turtles' catchphrases, Cowabunga and Turtle Power, became playground currency. Kids built makeshift lairs out of couch cushions, scarfed down extra slices of pizza, and debated which turtle was the best. The animated series ran for nearly a decade, spun off into video games, live-action movies, and more merchandise than you could fit in the party wagon. The Ninja Turtles proved you didn't need a corporate blueprint to take over the world. Just a sharp sense of humor, a little DIY spirit, and maybe a few nunchucks. Turtle Power wasn't just a slogan, it was proof that the right blend of creativity and chaos could turn an indie comic into a billion-dollar phenomenon. By 1987, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles merchandise had generated over $1 billion in sales, a figure documented by Playmates Toys and trade publications. This boom was rooted in the FCC's 1981 deregulation, which allowed toy companies like Mattel and Hasbro to shape entire cartoon lineups, as confirmed by congressional records and FCC filings. Animation became a global enterprise, with series like Inspector Gadget produced across 3 continents. Yet, key creative decisions, such as why Optimus Prime was killed off in the 1986 Transformers movie, remain the subject of conflicting accounts from Hasbro and Sunbow staff. While the era's commercial motives are clear, the reasons certain shows endured, like DuckTales and the Smurfs, are not fully explained by ratings alone. What is certain? These cartoons changed Saturday mornings forever, set new standards for media tie-ins, and inspired decades of animation worldwide. The legacy of the 1980s cartoon classics is documented in the enduring popularity of their characters, music, and stories, still recognized by audiences today.